everyone. Welcome back to the Genuinely Care About You podcast. My name is Christina Wilcox, and I am your host, or Christina S. Wilcox, as you may know me from the internet. I want to say really quick, I appreciate the patience in me getting this episode up. It has been not really quite the week because of anything crazy happening in our life. It's more just busy this time of year. Things are ramping up with some projects I have working on. I do work a full-time job apart from the stuff I put online, and I also just have been struggling with, I suppose, a quarter life crisis and figuring out some new transitions with OCD and medication and all of that, which I would honestly be happy to talk about in an episode, but that is not what we're going to be talking about today. Today's topic is one that I am really excited to cover. I started thinking about this a couple weeks ago, but it really just kind of overtook my mind a little bit, and I find everything that I'm about to say super interesting, but I am not an expert. I am not researching any of these topics actively. What we're talking about today is coming completely from my brain, my own observations, and my very subjective point of view of the world as me. So, if you saw on the Genuinely Care About You Instagram page, I posted a graphic recently that talked about not forgetting to touch grass. I think it said, "Don't forget to touch grass." And we've heard that phrase for a while now, but I feel like in this time of our lives, it's kind of becoming a movement or phenomenon, or I predict that it will, we're seeing a lot of trends of slow living and people abandoning everything and then pursuing this soft life away from technology while ironically posting about it still online. Probably, I think genuinely to encourage other people to reevaluate social media specifically, I think, in their life. But really quick, I got a new desk chair. And if you're not watching the video, you can't see, but I'm spinning around. And this is a nice little stim for me as I'm talking. I tend to get anxious when I record these episodes for some reason, or I get super out of breath and but I guess you can hear that. Yeah, you can hear that. Okay, I'll try and contain my rock in this chair so it's not too annoying. Okay, it is kind of annoying. Sorry. Okay, anyway. But reevaluating social media in our life, internet, technology, all of that. All with the phrase, "Don't touch grass," right? Or "Don't touch grass." Yeah, don't touch it. Ever. Is what a chronically online person would say. Right? Don't forget to touch grass so that you don't become chronically online, Being chronically online, if I can think of a definition of it in my head, if you've never heard it before, is just being so engulfed with social media or trends or phrases or memes or just the culture on social media that you're completely disconnected from reality, and you think that social media almost reflects reality, where I think often social media can give glimpses into reality, but it will never replicate reality, hopefully. But I don't think it will. I think it's impossible to replicate actual real life. But when you're so chronically online, you're disconnected from people, from the real world, from how things actually are versus how social media portrays that real life works, I guess. Anyway, I started hearing this phrase, don't touch grass. I think, oh my gosh, why do I keep saying that? I started hearing this phrase, don't forget to touch grass, from different podcasts I was listening to, or just like influencers being funny, or even memes. And I thought it was very funny, and I thought it was an important message, and I don't think that it's not anymore, but I'm like, I got really deep into why it's such a phenomenon, I guess, when I was thinking about it in my mind. Because when I first heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, don't forget to touch grass. Sunlight is helpful. Grass is helpful. The world being out away from social media and a digital world and framework of seeing things is so important. But then I started to notice, not just with these like soft living or slow living videos and influencers and everything else. And I hope when I say this, I want to put a disclaimer. I'm not like shading anyone who posts about that. I'm truly looking at all of this from like 30,000 feet above what's happening, because when I did, it really freaked me out and made me very existential, but I think it's an important freak out, kind of. I don't know. I don't need to fully explain myself with everything that I say, but I just wanted to give that disclaimer, that I'm just explaining what's been in my head regarding this topic. But anyway, I started seeing a lot of like content creators and podcasters, and I think even celebrities talk about this idea of, don't forget to touch grass. And then I saw like, I don't know, with that phrase, I started seeing a lot more videos on TikTok or Instagram Reels or wherever of people just like running around in the grass and running in fields and having like a really amazing experience doing so, as we should, like I believe we're created to experience the beauty of this world and to feel it beneath our feet. But I started reading the comments on some of these videos, and it was almost like reading people's spiritual reflection of them watching someone else run in the grass. And this also reminded me of how, not weird, but I think it's totally connected, that right now we're seeing this trend of like, not just nostalgia, but like, what would our ancestors say about how we're living now? Or like, I don't know if you've seen that on TikTok, but it's like, there's a lot of different sounds and trends that are about this idea of like having a conversation with either a past you or a past generation, a past, like, I don't know, like talking to someone from the 1600s. I sound very chronically online right now. Oops. But anyway, I started seeing this pattern, right, of these videos, the trends of like looking back on generations that didn't have as many resources, specifically in regards to this digital era we're in. And I started to think about this idea of what, like, it's one of those things where if you've also heard that trend of like what would put a child from the medieval ages in a coma, I really think this meta experience of like people watching videos of someone else touching grass with their feet and then writing like, wow, this is so profound in the comments, that almost put me in a coma. Because imagine people from previous generations, not even that long ago, like looking at these videos and comments and being like, of course touching the grass is good and makes you feel that way. But like, I think the fact that it seems to be such a profoundly spiritual experience for people to watch and like do themselves really put into perspective for me how disconnected we are from each other, from a higher power, whatever you believe in, from nature, from ourselves. Like it kind of caused me to spiral a little bit, honestly, into some existential, I wouldn't say crisis, but it really started to make me think about social media. And there's so much back and forth as to whether social media is good or bad or neutral. And I tend to lean more towards social media being neutral, or I used to, of like, and it just depends on how you use it and what you use it for. And I think those lines are getting so much more blurry, because even as a person who's creating content to put online, whether through graphics or a podcaster, at my 9-to-5 job, like I work in digital marketing, and there's this new wave that I'm realizing as I look at this pattern of people longing to be connected and living in a cottage in the woods. You know, I see this pattern of like social media is not that it's not neutral anymore, because I don't think that's true, but social media isn't something that we use for just entertainment anymore. It's not somewhere where we go to just post photos and have fun, or post a quick little blurb and then leave. Like, social media employs people. It is its own industry. It is forging new careers for many people, including me. And I think that is a positive for the most part, because like it gives a lot of artists and creatives specifically an outlet to make money, to gain recognition for their work, to find clients or customers. But I think we can't look at social media as this thing that's like, is it good or is it bad, or is it neutral? How do we use it? What do we use it for? Because it's like, it's literally a career field now. And I don't think that that's reversible. And because of that, it just caused me to think about social media in my own life. And as someone who is very online, because I have to be for my job, in a lot of ways, I'm finding it harder to, I don't even like to say it this way because it sounds really sad, but I do think it's kind of true. Like, the stimulation is wearing off. Like, we know all those articles about how social media provides us with dopamine and it can become an addiction, and I fully believe that. And it's hard to look at ourselves in a way of like, are we addicted to this thing, when it, again, now is a whole industry. And I think that I used to, and I am not saying I'm not burnt out, but I think I was confusing burnout a little bit with not being fulfilled by the stimulation social media used to bring me. And I think that is kind of like what, you know, people who are struggling with addiction, no matter, I don't know if you can say you can struggle with addiction in small or big ways, you know, but it's like, there's always this urge to like push something to its limit, to get more, to feel more, to experience more, to whatever. And I think where I used to keep pushing the limit on social media of like, how much more can I experience in my brain? I think eventually like I'm feeling fully like a brain fry. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't think it's me getting dumber. I think it's honestly being so hyper aware of two totally different worlds at the same time, all the time. And again, I don't want to call it burnout because I actually do feel relatively creative. I feel I'm beginning to feel a lot more connected to what I do again. But this relationship I have with social media, again, the only way I can describe it is brain fry. And the more I think about it, beyond it being an industry, but as this thing that takes me out of my life every day, I think those photos that used to go around on Facebook, I feel like I used to see so many people share these images, but like a couple in bed with their phones, like they're looking at their phones in bed, and then the image beneath it is like the same position with the couple, but they don't have the phones in their hand. And I always think that's such a profound image, because it's like, if we didn't have this thing in front of us, we would be talking, or we would not be talking. We'd be bored. We would be like letting our brains rest. And I think as I'm processing this out loud, I think that's more of what I'm craving, as opposed to like healing from burnout. I think since I'm in a generation of people that grew up fully with this digital world, and even still, I was talking about this with a friend, like I didn't have Instagram until I was a freshman in high school, which would blow people's minds because that's when it came out. Like that's when and that was only 8, no. When was I? Gosh, it might be 11 or 12 years. But anyway, it's been a long time since I've been in high school. Okay, I'm 25. It makes sense. But probably like 10 or 11 years since Instagram came out. And the fact that it's this whole industry now, and I just am starting to experience the effects of growing up in a completely immersed in a completely digital world. And it's worse, I think, for the generations below me and below us. Like I am right in between millennial and Gen Z, I think. I'm born in 1997, and I've never been sure about what that makes me. I think there's like a zillennial thing, because I don't feel like I relate to Gen Z, but I also relate to millennials in some ways. And I think that kind of provides us with a unique perspective, being in like the middle of these two generations. Because with millennials, there was like a different appreciation and excitement for technology. It was like in its barest, rawest forms, not technology, social media. When I say technology, I mean social media in general, because I know technology has been around for a very long time, but social media specifically. And the younger half of my generation and the generations below it are growing up watching people like run around in the grass, with people commenting below that video being like, gosh, my soul longs for this. And I'm not harping on anyone who's ever commented that, or if you've commented that, because I've even thought that watching some of these videos of these amazing landscapes of nature, or people looking carefree as they're running in a field. Like it's a beautiful thing to look at, but it's also a beautiful thing to be in the midst of as you. And I just have been thinking a lot about what it means to be the older end of these generations that are growing up with social media. And it's caused a lot of conversations with Noah and I, with friends, with my family, of just like, if and when Noah and I have kids, it's like, what do we do? Again, I don't think it's possible to reverse what has been done. And there's a lot systemically and even within legislation, I would go as far as to say that social media is like completely unregulated, especially with like misuse of people's images, with threats, with, I mean, I could, there's a lot of things that need to happen to make social media sustainable as an industry, because it's still not taken seriously in that way, which is crazy because it employs so many people. But it's just been interesting to think about, like, there's not that period anymore where you can get away. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know. I don't have any teenagers in my life that I can speak to about this. I guess maybe if you're a younger listener and you happen to be on the younger end of my generation of Gen Z, or even the generation below it, I would love to hear your thoughts about what it's been like for you to grow up in this digital space, and how weird is it to have a Razr phone instead of an iPhone? Because even when I was younger, that was like, I mean, there was a period where Razrs and all of that, it was genuinely cool. But I didn't have an iPhone until I think maybe sophomore year of high school. And I don't know if you can do that now. Again, it's like this balance of, I'm talking about these hypothetical children that I do not have at the moment, but just in general, it's interesting thinking about all of this, because besides millennials, like no generation prior to that has had to think about this whole other world. And because of that, you can see the effects of the denial or the grief or the criticism of this new age of social media, I think, for the older generations, because it did bring a lot of change. And on the younger end of the spectrum, that change can be exciting and intoxicating. But I think I understand where the older generation was coming from at first, with being wary of all of this stuff, because it makes sense to be wary of it even now. But I think there has to be, I've been wrestling with, how am I going to bring balance to my life with social media? I think that's the main question, and the main existential thought that the don't forget to touch grass phenomenon caused me and is causing me, because we're the closest generation to have like lived through growing up with social media existing in some form for our whole life. And not many, besides millennials-ish, no other generation can say that, really. And I think we have to accept, this is a very bold, subjective, opinionated statement, okay? But I believe that we have to accept some level of responsibility, even if we didn't want this responsibility, or it wasn't given to us, it's not passed down, it's not whatever. I do think that we have to accept responsibility for creating balance for future generations, for figuring out, even especially imperfectly in the beginning and probably the entirety of it, but I think that it kind of like is what it is, to realize, okay, social media right now is an industry. It is entertainment. It is a stimulant. How do I keep balance in my life? How do I learn to live with this thing that, for me personally, has quite literally provided me opportunities I never thought I would have. But that's weird to reconcile with this. Just like everyone else, I want to now live in a cottage in the woods and grow my own garden. And how is it possible to have both of those things? And how can I not think of social media as this very black and white thing? Because it never has been. Maybe it has been in the fact that people were always expecting to make an industry out of it. I think that that's fair to assume because people are greedy and are constantly using, at this point, like neuroscience against us, I think. I sound like a conspiracy theorist a little bit. And I'm honestly not. Conspiracies scare me. They keep me up at night. I try to avoid them. But I think social media is the only time I can see it a little bit, I guess. Even being on the quote unquote front lines of content creation in a very niche market audience corner of the internet. But I think that I've really been trying to figure out, how the heck am I going to do this? How are we going to do this? How is our future and current family going to do this? How am I going to enforce balance in my life with this thing that isn't going anywhere, that employs me? How can I not feel trapped by this, you know? I think that's the weird, like, Uno reverse card that I'm dealing with now is like social media used to be, and still is in some ways, such a form of escapism and a way to like enter this amazing world that isn't reality. But now, since those lines are so blurred, I'm trying to figure out, I think I said this in the first episode, the idea of how do I create a life I don't want to escape from. And I think when we let that be the foundational question of reflection, we can maybe figure out, okay, if I don't want to escape from my life, how does social media fit in then? Is it a way to post about my business? Is it a way to keep up with family or friends? Is it entertainment sometimes? Fill in the blank. But I think we've put so much energy and priority towards even just like watching social media grow that now personally, I'm trying to figure out what does social media in my life look like when I'm not using it to escape something? Or how do I create balance and boundaries? And this isn't a new conversation, I don't think, but I haven't really heard anyone talk about, like, I guess I want to call it like the don't forget to touch grass era phenomenon. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. And if you do know of someone who is researching this topic or talking about it, I would love to know, because I think it's so interesting. And again, it like really, really scared me and freaked me out when I was first thinking about it. But I think sometimes experiencing that discomfort helps us. Again, like, I do think we have to accept some level of responsibility, even though we didn't create social media. We didn't do anything. We simply were users on the other end. But we've been users the longest, I think. And so we do. I am a person who tends to assume duty, even if I don't need to do that. So perhaps I am a little more isolated in this feeling, but I really do believe there is a sense of duty with how do I not necessarily protect myself from this monster, because I don't feel that way, but how do I have balance? How do I accept reality? How do I create a life I don't want to escape from? And what do I need to do in order to make that happen? Yeah, I hope this camera has been in focus. I can see myself right here. And sometimes when I look over, it looks like I haven't been in focus. So I apologize if you're watching on YouTube. But that is all I wanted to say for this topic. Again, I appreciate the patience in me getting this episode out. It feels good to get it out of my brain. I feel like I burn a hole through my brain sometimes with how much I constantly am thinking about, but I really want to hear your thoughts. If you listen to this episode, please share it on social media and tag at Genuinely Care About You or my personal /Enneagram account at Christina S. Wilcox, because I really want to hear your thoughts. If you're watching on YouTube and you feel inclined to leave a comment, I would love to read it. I think this is an important discussion that the more we avoid it or ignore it, it's just going to become like the thought of figuring it out is going to become even more unbearable and frightening, you know? But I want to not leave on a scary note. I want to leave on a positive note. I'm trying to think of something positive that happened. I think the positive is that the sun is coming out. I wish I was a dark, mysterious, brooding personality, but I'm not. I need the sun. My Mediterranean, Middle Eastern roots. I need the sun so bad to feel like a person. And it's been so sunny in Colorado. Colorado is actually, I think, the fourth or sixth. It's in between there. Fourth or sixth sunniest state in the United States of America, which is very helpful for someone like me. But we also, this is the time of year in Colorado. I've been noticing, I sounded like a local when I said that. But I've noticed that February, March, and April are kind of like the true winter. And you get 4 days of beautiful weather, 2 days of absolute winter wreckage, 2 very wet, mushy days, and the cycle continues. And I'm just so thankful for the sunlight the last few days. It's been so rejuvenating. And I hope where you live, you are also experiencing glimpses of the sun and sunlight. All right. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, would love to hear your thoughts. And I will see you next week.